Hello and welcome back. This is Sherry with Heart and Soulful in the studio today. If you're joining me for the first time, welcome. I hope if you feel inspired and enjoy this video that you'll give me a thumbs up and hit subscribe so you don't miss out on a thing. I'm going to put the link to this entire series in the description, along with some other links that you might find useful. If I ever forget to put a link that I mentioned during the video, sometimes I do that. Ask me in the comments and then I'll make sure I go back and put it in there. So this series that I started probably 7-8 videos ago, something like that, was a challenge for myself, and I'm hoping that other people are maybe joining me. But I had been working on altered books and taking out lots of pages, and so I have piles and piles of book page that I want to recycle. So I thought it'd be a fun challenge to do a journal where I'm not letting myself use any decorative papers. I'm making everything out of recycled book pages. So I've kind of been bouncing around in the journal as ideas come to me. It took me a while to get my theme figured out, and I've decided on a travel theme, exotic travel, and with a bohemian feel. I knew I wanted to do a boho kind of style, this one, with a lot of bright color, and so then the travel theme kind of just went together with it. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm hoping that all the little ideas and techniques and different things that I'm learning along the way and sharing with you, that they'll be able to translate to whatever the theme is for your journal. So I had a viewer had asked, when I first talked about the challenge that I was going to do, she had asked me if I would go back and do another video on a stacked envelope junk journal, how to just put the whole basic thing together. And so I decided, since I had started this recycled book page journal, that I would make it in that kind of format, because I didn't really know what I was going to do yet anyway. So this is a stacked envelope junk journal. And like I said, I'm just kind of bouncing around. There is a video that shows how I got this far, putting it together, but I've left some things blank, the back page and this, which I'm glad, because now I have an idea for that. So I'm kind of just, like I said, bouncing around. So after the last video, whenever I'm working on a new thing that I think up, I'm doing a lot of experimenting. And in the last video, I was experimenting with how to make myself some black scrapbook pages, blank pages, to put my photos in. And when I did that, I had one experiment that turned out to me to feel kind of like a vinyl book cover. And I really liked that, how that turned out. This is just one single book page. So I decided to take this technique and make another little book that will be for my journal, and it's going to be a removable one again. And I decided to make it a passport, since I had made a list of kind of a prompt list for things that would go in a travel journal, what things I might want to include. So I'm kind of just going through and coming up with ideas from my little prompt list. So today I'm going to really take some time and kind of go through my thought process and exactly we're going to build this. So this might be a longer video. So if I get to certain points, I'll tell you, oh, fast forward through that. This is just taking a little time. So first thing I did was I want to do something really the shape and size. I just want it to be inspired by a passport. I don't want it to look like a passport. So I kind of grabbed my old passport. This is just an old one 2 passports ago that I hadn't done much traveling, so there were a lot of blank pages. So I had saved it so that I'll just have it for ephemera. And it was kind of neat to look through. Mine's a United States passport. Other countries, I'm sure yours are different, but I liked that there were different scenic backgrounds to all the papers. So I thought that was kind of fun. And then I also liked that they all had little quotes at the top. So these are all for the United States, and I wanted mine to be more a bohemian world traveler kind of thing. So for mine, I went ahead and I've been making all these mixed media papers. So I knew I would maybe find something for the cover from here. And so I had that, and then I knew the size that I needed, and it just worked out that my passport is just about the size of some of the book pages that I had to work with. So I thought, perfect, I can just fold them in half this way, and that will make my pages for the inside and for the cover. So the first thing that I did after I kind of knew the shape, size that I wanted it to be, and that I want something pictorial in the inside on the pages, but I want to keep it simple because this already has taken a long time. So I wanted to keep it simple. So I picked out, the first thing I picked out was I wanted to do some kind of label for the front, and I didn't know what I was going to do, and I'm not a great artist. I've mentioned that before. So I wanted a label that maybe I could just attach to the front of mine. So what I did was I don't know if you do Facebook, then you get all these ads pop up, and I had an ad for some vintage fonts that you could buy. And even though I don't really do a lot of, I'm just learning Adobe Illustrator, and I don't really know how to do kind of media things on my computer. I'm just learning how to do some of that kind of stuff. So I went ahead and had purchased this. So I actually was able to figure out how to get, they have some templates in there, and I figured out how to get a template and then change the words on it. So I don't know if you can see, I changed, this was already kind of a little pictorial template, and then I just changed the words to adventure passport to the most wonderful places, so that it fit within the design that the template was. So once I did that, I was able to just print out this little label on plain paper, and then I decided to go ahead and do some slow stitching on it, and then I added the gold to the lettering. When I did this, because I was working on just a single sheet of copy paper for my label, I went ahead and I attached it, I glued it to a piece of book page. This would happen to have a picture on it. But I wanted it to be 2 thicknesses so that I could do my stitching. And then the other thing that I thought would make it kind of easier to stitch, and I also wanted this to kind of look like a label, a sticker label. You know how suitcases or trunks would have travel stickers on them? That was kind of where my brain was at. So I wanted it to kind of look like a sticker that you would have got, and then that's going to be my label for my passport. So the first thing I want to show you is just some stitching. I've had people ask me some of the different stitches that I'm using, and I had an idea when I was doing this label, so I thought I'll share that, okay? So when I had my picture of my label, and then I glued it with a glue stick to a piece of book page to make it thicker. And then I went over the whole front of it with gloss Mod Podge. I don't know if you can see there's a sheen to it. I did that first because it would make it more durable while I'm stitching on it. And I wanted the gloss to be under my stitching so that I would have a shiny label, if that makes any sense. So I did that, and then I decided to do my stitching. So here's my idea. In order to get this border line, all these evenly spaced, I took the thread and bobbin thread out of my sewing machine, and I have a little sample card to show you. I took the thread out of my sewing machine, and then I made my stitch at about number 4 on my machine to get them, you know, a kind of a distance apart. And then I just sewed with no thread through my machine, and it made me a nice straight line. And then my machine needle is a little bit smaller than the needle I'm going to use to do my embroidery. So I just used this cushiony pad I've showed you before. You can use a folded up towel or something. And then I went back and just made my holes the size of this needle. I just punched those through just to make it easy. So I'm going to show you some of my favorite little stitches that I've been using to do just some slow stitching. So this border stitch is actually a Japanese, I don't know what the name is for it, but it's kind of like a blanket stitch, and it's actually a bookbinding stitch for my little book. So to start, I want to show this because you can use this for bookbinding too. So I'm just going to go through the beginning here, the first hole, and then I'm going to go around the edge. So that would be, if you were doing it for a book, it would be the spine. For my label, it was the outside edge of my label. Okay, so it's wrapped around. It's going to end up looking the same on the front and the back. So then I'm going to go down one. Okay, and then I'm now in the second hole back here, I'm gonna come wrap back around to the front. So every other stitch, you're moving forward in your line, and every stitch you're going around the spine. Okay, so now I've got two. These will all be in a row. These are going to alternate until we come back. So from the back, I'm going through the next hole. Okay, even though I'm skipped, I'm going to come back and do that. I'm going to go around the spine again. Through the next hole. So you're not skipping any holes. It's just every time you're going around the spine. So if you liked that look, once you reach the whole end, you can stop there and leave that gap in between. It kind of ends up looking like, you know, where you tore out binder paper that was a spiral bound. It's kind of that kind of a look. So you could leave it like that, or I'm going to show you. Imagine now that I've gone all the way to the edge. Then you just go back and fill in those alternate ones. So now I have an empty one back here. I'm going to go through that one. And that would be my end. And when you end up, if I had left a tail on this, I would just tie mine off there. So that's how you would do it for bookbinding. But it also gives you a cute edge stitch for around labels or that kind of thing. Okay, so that's one idea. The other thing that I do just a lot of, I've got a line over here, is I just do a straight, kind of a straight stitch. And then I would go back to that one. So that would just be maybe to outline something. The other thing that you can do is when you make these holes, these are evenly spaced. You can also do it where you have two that are further apart, and then the next one's really close, and then the next one's further apart, and then the next one's really close, and that gives you a different look. I like to leave maybe gaps in between for that one. So the narrow space is the gap in between, and the long space, you're actually doing a stitch. So that's kind of a cute one to do. Then the other two that I'm mostly doing are Lazy Daisy. So I'm just gonna make a hole, and then I'm gonna go around and maybe make 5 or 6 holes. I won't do the whole flower for you, but you'll get the idea. So let me get to the back. So I'm gonna come up the center of my flower, and then I'm gonna hold this with my thumb, and I'm gonna go back in the center. Okay, and it kind of makes this petal shape. And then I'm going to come from the back to one of the outer circle with my needle through the loop that I made. And then depending on if you want your petal shape to stay like that, you would leave less tension, or if you do it tighter, it's going to make it like a long skinny kind of petal. I'll do that again since I didn't say what I was doing. So I'm gonna come back up through the center for the next one. Hold it with my thumb, go back in the center, come up through one of the outer holes, through the petal, and then pull it to your tightness. Now that loop is here. If you can see, I'm gonna go over the edge of the loop and back through the same hole. And that's going to capture that petal and hold it down. And then you go back through the center. And same thing, you're just going to work your way around that petal. So that's a really simple flower one. The other one is just to make it more like a star. Instead of doing the petal loop, just go into the outer hole. You do the same kind of circle thing. Go into the middle and then out. So it's just really one stitch from the center to the outside of your flower. And you can do that with, I like to do those with maybe uneven lengths of petals, we'll call them. or even do one with longer ones and then to pick a contrasting color and do a shorter one in between. That makes a pretty flower too. So those are just kind of some little freehand embroidery things. And for this, I did the binding stitch around the edge, and then I did some lazy daisy ones in a couple of different colors, and then I also did just some simple star-shaped ones. So there were already flowers on this picture, and so I just went over the flowers that were there. So I didn't have to, you know, think a lot about it. It was just, it kind of just gave it a little bit more embellishment. So that's my slow stitching for that label. So once I had that aside, it kind of gave me a color palette, you know, that my passport was going to be. So I went through all of my papers and just picked one. This was one of the mixed media ones that I had painted, and then I have done some metallic, using a stencil with metallic pens. I've shown that in previous videos. So these papers I kind of already had to this point, and then I just went through and picked one that I liked with my label. So this is going to be my cover. I went ahead and tried to get it as close to the size of my passport that I could. And I've, just for the sake of time, I've already gone ahead and added 2 more layers. So I had my single painted piece, and then this is 2 more book pages, made it this thickness. And I'm gonna be gluing down 1 more layer. I could add another layer, but it's gonna be good enough for my journal, and I don't want it to get too thick. So to glue those down, I've shown that before too, that I just took my paper and then used glue stick. I used a glue stick for this part. And I just start at one end, put it down, I flip it over. In fact, maybe I won't go ahead and do it. I flip it over to the back side to use my card. Where's my little card? Like this. After I put the glue stick, it gets all the bubbles and everything out and gets it stuck down. And the reason I do that and do it from this back side is if you're working on a clean side, a painted side, something decorative, sometimes you'll leave marks because I use this for everything. It's got paint and stuff on it. I don't want to mess up my cover. So you could either put another clean piece of paper down so that, you know, or I just flip it over because this is going to get covered too. So I've got 3 layers now for my cover. And then I'm gonna go and use my Vintage Photo Distress Oxide. I've done part of it already, but I wanna get these edges not white. I'm gonna be gluing some other things down, and it would be hard to get back in here and cover that. And it's also very hard to get all of your, every single piece of paper that's gonna go in here the exact same size. So rather than have a little white edge, I don't wanna see that. So I've kind of already, even though this is gonna get something glued to it, I go kind of in a little bit because like I said, if my next paper is not exactly the same size, I don't wanna see white. So that's just what I do. And then if you want, you can go, we're gonna be doing something else to this. So you wanna get any color, anything down first. So I won't be able to go back and do this later. So I'm gonna go ahead and maybe just even darken the front of my edges a little bit. For my cover. And this is my favorite Distress Oxide. I use it the most. You can use any color that you want, or you can skip this step too. Okay, so I've done that a little bit there. And then I think I'm gonna go ahead and show you the next step to the cover, because that can be drying then. So in order to make my cover have this vinyl feel, what I did was I used matte Mod Podge, and I know some of you don't like Mod Podge. You can use Collage Podge or whatever works wherever you live in your climate. My climate's very dry, and so this one is just fine for me. So I'm gonna get my Mod Podge brush that I use here. I keep it in water. And I always pour some of my Mod Podge into this little container that I can then recycle, you know, I can put it back in the container. Or sometimes, like in this case, if you've put Distress Oxide or ink or anything on it, and then you go over with your brush, it's actually going to have a chemical reaction with the ink. And I like that look. I've shown it before. It makes it kind of softer. And when you do that, it seals everything in, which is nice, but it also transfers that ink to your brush. So you don't want to then contaminate your main container. Then the other thing I need to do this is I like to give it a texture also that's kind of like, I don't know if you can see this, but there's kind of a texture to the cover. So I kind of wanted to do that. I've done this technique in a previous video, if you watched it, where I did something with vintage photos to make new photos look old. Kind of like the portrait ones, portrait studio, portraits of days gone by, that kind of thing. So I'm gonna just go over my whole thing here, just to seal everything in. And I don't know if you can kind of see how it blurs that inked line. And that's what I like. So you got to work kind of quickly because you don't want this to dry. And then what I've got here with me is a piece of scrim. I've used it before. I like scrim. It's an open weave, really thin fabric, but it's has a tighter weave than like kitchen fat. What is that called? Cheesecloth. It's a tighter weave than cheesecloth, but kind of a gauzy kind of thing. So I lay that on there while it's wet and then just go over it with my brayer. And that's gonna leave that texture there. I'm just gonna peel it off. So I don't know that you'll be able to see it too much, but it's there. So I don't know, can you see their texture? So I kind of like that. And then the Mod Podge just is going to give me that kind of vinyl feel. So I'm going to let that dry real quick. You know that in previous videos, I've been ironing in between all of my paper things where I've painted and that kind of thing to get them flat again. Once you have put Mod Podge on, it's a glue, you don't want to just go with your iron to that. So what I try to do is just use my brayer and my this scrim, and while it's drying, just kind of, you know, try to keep it flat that way. See, it's already dry where I live, so that's good. Okay, so I stayed pretty flat, but it just gives me kind of that vinyl-y feel. Now, it's not quite dry yet, so this would have been the part that normally I would go with my iron, but I don't really want to get glue on my, if I put a piece of protective paper over this, because it's glue, when I heat it up, it's going to stick white paper or whatever I have to this, and I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to try to be careful and not let this get too wet anymore, and just keep it flat that way. Worst case, I have done the iron thing, but I do it on a lower setting, like no higher than silk, and then maybe use my cheesecloth. Maybe I'll try that. I'm gonna pull this over here. So I'm using this to protect my ironing board. It's just a quilter's cut and press, and that's gonna protect my ironing board. But if I wanted, say I needed to flatten this, I got a bubble or something like that, I can very carefully just do this, but do it on a lower setting. You just want to be really careful because you've gone to all that work and you don't want to mess it up. So that's better, okay? So I've got my cover, feels like vinyl, has a little texture, is protected. And then I can put my label on it. Now you could have skipped that step if you want, but to me, working with all of this paper, I liked that they have different textures. And then also, it makes it more durable because I've now protected it with the Mod Podge. So I kind of like doing that. Now I'm gonna get rid of this brush so I don't dry it out. And I've gone ahead and I could glue this down on my cover, but I went ahead and put it through my sticker maker just because I know people like to see that. And my sticker maker is this Xyron, and this one is a Create a Sticker. It's the 2.5 inch, so it's the mini. They make it in a larger one, like a 5 inch now, and I don't know if they made it when I've had this for many years, so I don't know if they made it in the 5 inch, but I might have to invest because I use this all the time. You just, in fact, I have something here I'll put through just so you can see, is you just kind of, I have 2.5 inches wide that I can work with here. There's kind of a little track, and I just kind of stick the things in there to start, and then you just crank it, and you have stickers. And you buy these rolls of blank sticker. They come in a little cartridge, and you can get permanent or repositionable. This one happens to be repositionable because I'm out of permanent, so I might need to actually add a little glue, but at least it's gonna, you know, kind of stick it down where I want. So I think I can go ahead, and I think I'm gonna wait, only because I'm gonna be gluing something else down here, and I don't want that to be lumpy. So I'll wait a little bit for that. Okay, so we have our cover. Next thing I need to do is have inside pages. So I went ahead and cut my book page paper to the size that I needed. And then I had this idea that I wanted to do a world map on all the pages. So rather than have them be all different like my passport was, I went ahead and I just did a whole world map. And I'll show you my copy that I made. Where'd it go there? I just pulled this design off of the internet. You can find free maps that you can print that, you know, are licensed. You can do that, and it's not a big deal. So I just found a map that I could do that with, and then I just made it to the size. You can see it's just the outlines. You can get some that have countries or a color or whatever, but I wanted mine to be really subtle and just background. So I have all my book pages that are cut the right size. They're gonna end up getting folded this, so this is the top of the world and the bottom here. So I wanted them all to be in the same position so that when you open each page, it creates the whole map no matter what page you're on. So I needed for this book page to be on the same place in my paper. So I printed it out first to see where it was gonna hit. And then I just grabbed my first book piece, and with a pencil, I just marked the corners. So that way the next one, I will get it in exactly the same position. So I've put one on here. I've already copied this one. And I've done this before in other videos, but what I do, it's the same thing how I did the tissue paper currency thing, is I just get a piece of wall safe tape that can remove easy. And this one, I barely caught it on the edge because I know that I need the most of this paper. I don't want something to get tattered on the edge. So I just did the top edge. It feeds through my printer like this, okay, and comes out. So I wanted both sides with the map on it so that when I fold each page over, the map's there, okay? So I needed to do the reverse side. Normally I would have just went like this, then it would be upside down. So I just watched, this needs to be my top, so I went this way, lined it up. Okay, and I'm actually gonna do this one because I need it for this project to finish showing you. So I'm gonna go put this in my printer real quick, and then I have to pull it up on my computer. So this is a good spot to fast forward. Until I get here. Now on my computer, on my printer, I'm not gonna bring it over there, but on my printer, it didn't save, it didn't save the, let's see, where's my map? Okay, so I just go to File. This is in my preview. I use a Mac. So I have opened my preview that has my map, and then I have to switch it to landscape because it defaults at portrait. and then I'm just going to hit print. So I have to do that every time, or it's going to print it this way. That's why on my little paper that I had, you saw some map. I learned by doing it wrong. So that's printing real quick, and I already have all my other ones ready. And then the next thing I wanted to do is to put little quotes on each page. So I went and got a bunch of different travel quotes, and then I just typed them into my Word program in my computer, and then I just printed them out. So I did 2 columns the same, just so that I don't waste paper. If I would have been thinking ahead, I would have printed this on sticker paper, and that would have made my life easier, but I had already printed it, so why waste it, right? So I'm going to grab this out of my printer. And I want to show this whole process because I learned some things. So now this is printed on both sides. See, this was the time I forgot to switch it to landscape, and it printed the second one. So I had to do each of these individually. It's not like you can just ask it to print a bunch, because you've got to put it on your paper every time. So once I did that, then I realized I needed to heat set my ink, because if you do the next step, you will you'll smear. So I've got my iron again. I can actually turn it back up to kind of a wool setting, and I'm just going to heat it up to set my ink, and hopefully in this short time it will do it enough. And I can go straight with my iron without a protective piece because I have no paint or anything on this. It's just my printer ink. Okay. So the next step was to use just some white gesso. If you watched my other video, I had been using the valued version, and I bought the professional version because I was out of the other one. They both work. For this, because I want to see through it more, I want to do the lightest coat. If you use the value one instead of this professional one, it's thin enough that one coat's actually probably going to be perfect. So I need my brush that I use for my gesso brush. I keep a dedicated brush for gesso, one for Mod Podge, and then one for paint. That way I don't ruin. If I forget and leave something in, I won't ruin it. So this is my little container, so I can just pour what I need. So you have to be really careful, because I want just such a thin layer. I want to see the map through, that I really only want to hit this once if I can avoid going over it twice. So you can actually see that didn't set perfectly because it's kind of smearing. But it's a handmade thing. It's not going to be perfect. It's fine. So just get over the whole. And the reason I did this was because now I can write on it. Doing the gesso over book page, you can see the text through, which is kind of nice. I had mentioned before that I wanted to kind of keep a hint that it's book page, but make it usable. So I'm just going to take my heat gun. So I can flip it over. And normally I would clean this off before. It's much easier to clean before you use the heat gun to dry. Okay, and then just do the other side. Another part you can speed up through. I'll be smart and clean this time. Okay, dry towel. And then I don't think I need this anymore, so we'll put it back in water, get rid of that. And finish drying here. Okay, now I've mentioned this before in doing this. This is still, you know, as soon as you introduce water to this old book page, it soaks right in. So this is not completely dry yet. So like what I like to do is use my iron again. And this is where you want to use something to protect it. I'll just grab this piece of paper. I think I need to get my tape off. Whoa, get my tape off. And I'm just gonna go this way where it's clean. And just protect your book page. And then just go with your iron. This is quick, and this will take all the moisture out of the paper. And the reason I like to do that is when you're working with it and it still has any kind of liquid in it, it's fragile and I don't want to tear it. So if I do this, get all the moisture out, then it's going to thicken the paper for one, because it's all dried out and stiffer, and it works out much better. So I can already tell that just about done here. So it doesn't take too long, but it's just, I don't know, it's one of those steps that it just made it much easier to work with later. So my last little piece. Okay, so I have my other pages, so I'm gonna fold this one in half. And because I had them in that corner, they should all be positioned in the same spot. Okay, and you do get this little break in your spine, so that does happen. But it's, you know, it's paper and gesso. Okay, so I have that. I want to make sure that it's the same size. It's a little tiny bit bigger. So I think I will use my cover as a guide. And I usually walk over and don't bring this, but now that I have my new camera set up, I have more space, a little bit more space to work. So I can actually show all my things. So I'm gonna line that up at one end, and then I can kind of see where the edge of my book is. I don't want to accidentally cut my book. The other thing you could do is just use scissors to do the edge too. That might be easier to follow along the edge. Okay. Usually when I make the little books, you make the inside pages a little smaller than the outside pages. And then that's more forgiving, but a passport isn't made that way. So that's pretty close. Close enough. Close enough for our handmade project. So I've got my paper, and then I want to make my corners. I show this all the time. This is my We Are Memory Keepers corner punch. It does 3 sizes, and it works really well. When I very first started doing this, I bought one that did not work well. So it seems like all the tools that I've gotten from here are good. Okay, so I made my little things, and then I want to go ahead and get rid of my white edge with my vintage photo. The other thing that I could have done, and I didn't think about it until after, was I could have maybe tinted my white gesso just a tiny bit with some acrylic paint or something, or some, I don't know, something, ink or something, just to knock down the white, because I'm not a huge fan of the bright white. So I'm gonna go and do my edges too, my spine, and I'm gonna actually come around and get rid of some of that whiteness. Because I want this to kind of look more like, I don't know, it's like exotic travel. It could be old and kind of treasure mappy looking instead of like a real passport, you know. My idea with the whole passport journal thing is to, it could be like maybe you don't really travel, or maybe you just dream of traveling, or maybe you're making this for someone younger and you just want them to be adventurous or something like that. It could be a passport full of bucket list places that you hope to go to, you know. I think I'm going to make mine be a little of both, you know. I can put you know, places I've been in here, but then also places that I hope to go to someday. And maybe you just, you know, I may never get anywhere again. I don't know. Okay. So there I have my other page that fits in here. Now, one thing that I for sure noticed, I did a lot of the steps ahead of time because I didn't want this to be the never-ending video. But when you stack together all your pages, even though they were originally the same size, every one in sticks out further. So you have to just make sure you get all of your things trimmed. I tried to do that ahead of time, so it's not too bad. But they will be all, because you're stacking them. Once I sew these together, it'll kind of tighten them up a little bit, but that's just how it is. So the way my passport went together was all of these pages were a signature, and then, but the cover doesn't have any stitching. So I need to stitch these together first and then glue those outside pages as my inside book cover. Okay, so I'm gonna do that. Where's my center here? So there's a couple ways you can do this. You can do it by hand if you don't have you can, actually 3 ways. So you could run it through your sewing machine and just do a straight stitch through there. If you do that, I would adjust it to like a basting length so your stitches are farther apart. What happens when you sew paper is you're perforating the paper. So if your stitches are too close together, your paper's just going to tear out. So you have to be careful about that. Having them be further apart is better, but you can see how close these are together. It would just end up perforating those. So you want to be careful. This paper is a little heavier duty than book page. So, you know, the gesso helped a little bit, but it's still not as durable as a passport. Okay, so I'm going to use my fancy book binding tool because I love it and it makes it so much easier. I've shown this before. In fact, I showed it in the last video. It's from We Are Memory Keepers too. And in the last video where I did the scrapbook, I put it in this way because of the type of binding that I did. You can also do just a center binding with the other side. So this has like a little trough in it. And I think what I want to do, because, oh no, it's not going to go through there, is just do all the pages together because it's not too thick. So I'm going to put this in that little trough. Now, even though I can't see where my holes are to see if I'm centered, when I put this other piece on, I will see my punching holes. So if I want it to be centered, I need to move it like there and not have it butted all the way to the end. So I just want to make sure, actually, it's very helpful if you clip these, and that way they won't move. Okay. And then I just want to be centered between some holes there. That looks good. And then you just screw these down to hold everything together. This is just so much easier than, you know, you can make a little pattern with one and then, you know, punch them individually. Use a soft pad like my butcher box pad that I use, or a towel, folded a towel, and then just make a template and do it. So hopefully these are going to be lined up good enough. So I'm going to actually, I think I'll go ahead and alternate. I could do these holes this close together, but I don't really have to. So I'm gonna alternate. This kit comes with, I should put the link for you. It comes with this little pokey tool, and then it actually comes with all the, I've taken it out of the little pouch that it came in, but it comes with some needles that I broke, my favorite ones. I need to get more. It comes with some waxed thread, which this is maybe thicker than I need to use, but it is white. I could use dental floss. This is almost like, reminds me of dental floss. You can also wax your own thread. So a lot of times I'll just use, this is like button thread. So it's thicker than like regular sewing all-purpose thread, and you can get these in the sewing department, and it's wax in there, and so then you can just wax your own thread if you want. It just makes it glide easier, but it's not necessary. So I've just waxed that thread, and then I need a needle. I broke both of the needles that came with this kit, but you can buy a set. These are from Singer. They're just like multi-purpose heavy-duty upholstery kind of needles. And the other one, it's amazing that I broke it, but it broke like at the eye. I was just really pulling hard on something, and I guess it was just cheap metal or something. But it was basically a needle about this size, shorter, with a dull edge, a dull end. So I could sand that down if I wanted, but it's fine. So I'm just gonna, I think I'll just go ahead and use this thread because I don't need as thick as that upholstery thread. So I've punched my holes. I can take this out. And then I'm going to start from the spine side and have my knot be there because I'm going to be wrapping it with the other cover. So it's not, and you can start, a lot of these stitches, they actually tell you start in the middle, but I always start at the top because I usually end up having kind of a dangle thing there. So I'm just going to go in and out. And you see that it's alternating, but when you come back up, you'll be going through the opposite holes, so you'll be filling it in. There's probably a name for this. I don't remember what it is. Saddle stitch, maybe? Another part you can fast forward through. So then I'm to the end. And then I'm just going to go back, which will take me through those alternating ones. This is why I usually don't demo everything, because it's slow. But I have to say, I have been having so much fun doing this whole project because it really makes you think. You know, you don't have a paper pack that you can rely on, an idea. You have to come up with all of them. And then it's kind of fun because I always kind of like, I could call it MacGyver. That's a show that we had here where he would be stuck with no tools or not what he needed to get out of a bad situation. So I always call it MacGyvering things. I have to figure out how to do something with what I have. So I just like that. It's just a challenge. I'm gonna go ahead and trim that off before I tie it. So I've always been that way. I think I like to challenge myself. I like to learn new things. And so this has been a really fun project. Plus it's been very freeing in a way. You know, it's just, you're kind of like a kid again, because you're just trying. I just love experimenting and trying things. And I mean, they may have been done before, but maybe not in this way. So I think just adding that whole only letting myself use recycled paper just kind of made me step it up a notch. Okay, so I can take those. So now I have my binding stitched, and then I could maybe do one more knot so it doesn't come apart. But it seems like I come up with, before I'm finished with one thing, I come up with my next one, and I get so excited. I just want to start, you know, I just want to start it. And so I already have my next idea. In fact, I might do a little tease at the end, because I had a little time before I was able to record this today. My husband has a little gym right next to my studio, and he's been working out a lot, especially with the snow. We're snowing again, day 2 here. So I have to work my video around his workout. So I had time to start practicing, experimenting on my next project. Okay, so I have my book that's going to go together now, and I need to glue this down to this one. And I didn't think ahead about how I want to do that. If I want to Mod Podge it, I really don't want to introduce water anymore. So I think I'm going to use my glue stick, and then what doesn't stick down, I'll use my fine line applicator. And I think that's just the safer way to go. So I'm going to start at one end. I always start at one end just because I can get that edge stuck down before this glue dries really fast where I'm at. So I at least can get the edge started. And I don't want glue on my cover. And I don't want to mess up my white paper. So I'm going to use this. Where's my, I don't know where my card went. Maybe I'll find it here somewhere. And then I can work down. Yeah, this is going to work better. If I introduced water, because I have multi-layers here already, I might get bubbles, and I don't want that. I wanted it to be really flat. So I pull up a little bit where I had already glued, just so I know that I get good coverage. And I can go halfway maybe. Okay, I have a little card somewhere that I use, and I don't know what I did with it. It's probably hiding under something. That looks pretty good. Make sure I get my string in there. Oops. Now that ended up being a little smaller. No, maybe why. Okay, pull it apart, pull it apart. I need to do this from the spine so that it folds well. I love working with these mats because I can clean everything off as I go and not contaminate what I'm working on. But there's such a glare with my lighting. It's kind of a win some, lose some thing. And I see that came out better. I was a little off. I needed to have folded that before I glued that back side down. Oh, I hope I was, yeah, I did. I was gonna say, I hope I was paying attention to which side went up. And I did it right. That's my front. Okay. Okay, yay, my little passport. So I have stickers to put on those pages that I hadn't done yet. So I had made these little, I had made these little things. I should have put them on sticker paper. I did not. And then I didn't want them white, so I went around the edges with my Distress Oxide in Vintage Photo. And then I don't know if you can see, there's a tiny hint of sparkle. I can see it. I'm not sure it shows on camera, but I use my little sheer shimmer from Imagine that I love. It just gives it a little tiny sparkle. And it also, because it's liquid and this is water soluble ink, it kind of does that whole kind of blendy thing that I like. So I went ahead and did that just because I just want it to be a little magical. So let's see. This one's good for the first page because it says, a journey of 1,000 miles must begin with a single step. So I'll put that here. And then this one, it is only an adventure that some people succeed in knowing themselves, in finding themselves. So I'll put that one here. So I just liked this idea. I love quotes. It's something I save quotes. I have books of quotes and quotes on my computer that I put in files. So this way, it's kind of like little prompts all about travel. And then you can see the map through there a little bit. You see the book page to know it's made from book page. These are kind of sticky still because they're not totally dry. Not all who wander are lost. We wander for distraction, but we travel for fulfillment. Anyway, it's just fun comments all the way, quotes all the way through. So you could write on this. My idea for, because it's a passport and you usually have stamps. Of course, I don't have all those stamps. I thought about digging out my current passport that has lots of stamps and like scanning those and maybe making little stamps and putting those in here. And I may do that. If you have noticed on a lot of these, probably about every one of these little projects that I've done, I've left something undone, mostly because I'm so anxious to get on to the next one, but there'll be little finishing touches. So I'm hoping that at the very, very end of this series, when I'm completely finished and do a flip through, there will be new things in each project that I had not done in the demo video. So that'll be kind of fun. So one of the things that I'm gonna do is I had ordered a while back, I had forgot that I had these, but I think I got them off of Etsy or something, but they're stamps from all over the world. You can just buy a bunch of them, you know, somebody else has kind of put the collection together. But it's a whole bunch of stamps and they're real stamps. So I thought, well, that's fun because they're from all over the world and I can just, you know, maybe mark the spot and then put the stamp, or, you know, maybe I've traveled to some of these places. Maybe I want to travel to some of these places. So I thought that's kind of a fun thing to put stamps in your passport. So that was just one idea that I haven't gone through these yet. So I'm going to do that hopefully by the end of the series. This little booklet will be a little bit more decorated. And then you can kind of see what I came up with. This little pouch, if anyone's curious, they come in a couple of sizes. They're from scrapbook.com, but it's just a nice way to file away your ephemera. So that's just a little organizational thing. Now, the final deal, I can put my label and hopefully it will just stick. And I'm just gonna kind of center it in my little pattern here. And if it doesn't stick totally, which I think it's going to, I can use my fine line applicator, this little guy, and get any little corners. But I think it's gonna work, yay. Oh, it's so cute, I just love it. I love it when you come up with an idea and you actually get it together and it turns out the way that you imagine. So my little passport thing. Now I have to put stamps in it, put my dream list of places I want to travel, and then put it in my little book. And I decided in my book, I wanted it at the beginning, and I had already done this pocket, the previous pocket. So I thought, well, I'll just do this. I haven't done this page yet, and it's really, even though it's kind of wide enough, I could make just like a belly band, but I've made this notch, and then it won't fit, I don't think. I could do just a little pocket at the bottom and stick it in. I don't really want to cover my label. So what I came up with was just to use this little elastic stretch cord. I bought this at Walmart in the jewelry section, I think. I think it was in the jewelry section, maybe in the sewing, but I think in the jewelry. Just some little metallic cord. And then I can just put my little book, because the cover is so cute, I want to see it. So I can just slide it in like that. I like that. And then that way I can still do something here with maybe a pocket or something. So that's where I'm at in my book. Now, do you want to know what my next idea is? I ended up having to take the ties, which I'm glad, because I wasn't really loving them anyway. I don't really like books that have, it has a tie here and then another tie over here. It's kind of redundant. But I had went ahead and put these in because I figured I needed something. But my new idea is, it started with a luggage tag. That's going to be the next thing from my list. And then it turned into, you know, this doesn't maybe have to be a book. This could maybe be like a pocket kind of thing that looks like luggage, because I need a place to put my luggage tag. And so I thought about, well, this one's big. I could make this my luggage, but I'm afraid my tag would be too bulky in here. And I knew I wanted to do a window tag at some point. So I'm thinking a luggage tag will be perfect for a window tag. And I think I want to do it here. So I'm thinking, I have inspiration. I will show you my absolute very favorite, I think it's my favorite thing that I bought on a trip. And I don't know if it'll fit in my frame here. I was going to take a picture of it so you could see it, but I bought this at the souk in Morocco, if you can believe that. It's true. You can get them here now. I think people import them, but I just have a wonderful memory of this, of shopping for this. And it's really old. It's this is from the Ottomans, and I love how it has this flap. Do you see that? I love that it's a carpet bag, and it has these fun buckles on the front and little pockets with buckles on the side. So it's like one of my favorite things. So that's going to be my inspiration. I hope it works out, since I've now told you what I want to do. But I think that I want a flap here with a buckle on the back. And I just think that'll be so neat. I just am excited about it now. So I started, like I said, my husband was working out earlier. So I started playing around with making leather out of book page. So I'm real excited. I've been playing around. It really feels like fabric or leather. And so we're gonna see what I come up with. I don't know. We'll see how it turns out. So I hope if you like this, you give me a thumbs up and subscribe, like I said, if you haven't. I'll try to remember to put links in the description for some of the things I showed. And I want you to have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.